You've heard the name, you've seen the photo. Intense eyes behind thick glasses, a finger raised as if striking lightning with truth. Malcolm X. To some, he was a villain, a radical, a man consumed by hate. To others, he was a hero, a warrior, a mind awakened far ahead of its time. But here's the truth. Most people have no idea who Malcolm X really was. They know the sound bites, they know the headlines. But they don't know the evolution, they don't know the shift. Malcolm X began as a man driven by pain, anger, and a burning desire to reclaim dignity in a country built on his people's suffering. But by the end of his life, he had transformed into something far more powerful, a global visionary, a strategist, or a humanist. In this video, we're going to explore not just the biography of Malcolm X, but the psychological transformation, how hate became a tool, how the mind can be weaponized and then liberated, and how one man's path from darkness to light can become a blueprint for personal power. Whether you're here to learn about racial injustice, to understand motivation, or to unlock success through struggle, you're in the right place. This is the story of the real Malcolm X, not the myth. Not the monster, not the martyr, the man, the mind, the message, from hate to human rights. Before he was Malcolm X, he was Malcolm Little, a child born into fire. He didn't come from peace, he came from resistance. His father, Earl Little, was a preacher and a proud follower of Marcus Garvey, a man who told his children they were kings and queens long before society was ready to hear that. But the world didn't respond with admiration. It responded with violence. Earl Little was murdered, run down, or perhaps beaten and left on trolley tracks, depending on who you believe. But either way, the message was clear: speak black pride and you pay in blood. Malcolm's mother, Louise, a fierce and intelligent woman, fell into despair, not because she was weak, but because she was broken by a system designed to crush strong black families. She was institutionalized. Her children were taken. Imagine that, being ripped from the only safety you've ever known, told your father was an enemy of the state and your mother was unfit to survive. Malcolm became a ward of the state, passed from foster home to foster home. He was bright, ambitious, curious, but when he told a teacher he wanted to be a lawyer, the teacher told him, "A Niger can't be a lawyer, be a carpenter." That's not just racism, that's psychological programming. That's how the system teaches young black minds to shrink before they even know their full size. So Malcolm ran from school, from hope, from the pain of being underestimated. He became Detroit Red, a hustler, a gambler, a drug runner, not because he lacked intelligence, but because the world had told him that was the only role available to him. And then he was caught, arrested, sentenced to 10 years in prison. But here's where the story starts to shift, because prison didn't break him, it awakened him. While locked in a cage, he read everything he could find. He devoured books, philosophy, history, religion. He rebuilt his mind from the ground up. He found the nation of Islam, and more importantly, he found language for his rage, the pain he had been carrying since childhood, the trauma of racism, the loss of his family, the slow psychological erosion of his identity, now had a purpose. Hate wasn't just an emotion anymore, it was a form of rebellion, and for a man who had been told he was nothing, hating the system that tried to destroy him felt like power. But here's the twist, that power came with a cost. Malcolm was rising, but the fire inside him still had a long way to burn before it would become light. When Malcolm walked into the world of the Nation of Islam, he didn't just find a religion, he found an identity he could control. They gave him a new name. Malcolm Little was dead. X was born, not just a letter, but a symbol, a mark for what was stolen from him, his real name, his African heritage, his lineage erased by slavery in that single letter X. He declared himself unowned, undefined, and unbroken. The Nation of Islam gave Malcolm something he had never had before: order, no drugs, no alcohol. No crime, wake up early, dress sharp, speak well. It was discipline wrapped in dignity, and it was intoxicating. This is where dark psychology begins to enter the story, because the nation didn't just teach Malcolm to clean up his life. It taught him how to hate with purpose. He learned that white people were devils, literally, not metaphorically, not just the racists, all of them. That belief, as shocking as it sounds today, served a psychological function. It gave Malcolm, and thousands like him, an internal logic for the chaos they had endured. If the system was evil, it must be because the people running it were evil. It gave black men permission to see themselves not as victims, but as chosen. For the first time, Malcolm wasn't ashamed to be black. He was proud, not in spite of his skin, because of it. And under Elijah Muhammad's leadership, Malcolm's natural charisma became electric. He was a force. His speeches were fire, his words sharp as razors, cutting through lies and illusions. People listened, people followed, but here's where the psychological trap tightens. The Nation of Islam didn't allow question. It didn't tolerate dissent. The truth was whatever Elijah Muhammad said it was, and Malcolm, loyal to the core, became not just a leader, but a weapon. He was sent to debate ministers, destroy journalists, and dominate television screen. He called out Dr. King. He rejected integration. He preached that the white man was beyond redemption, and the crowd roared. This wasn't just a religion. It was a psychological machine, a carefully controlled echo chamber of rage, order, and reverence. But Malcolm X was too intelligent to remain caged forever, and cracks were beginning to form. He started to notice hypocrisy, inconsistencies, betrayals, and once you start asking forbidden questions, the answers will either set you free or destroy you. Hate is seductive, it's sharp, it's clean, it gives you focus when the world feels chaotic. It becomes a shield against your pain and a sword to strike back at those who caused it. Malcolm X knew this intimately. His early teachings were not just fueled by righteous anger, but by a deep psychological wound that had never fully healed. Every time he said, "The white man is the devil," he wasn't just condemning an enemy. He was reaffirming his own worth. Dark psychology tells us something critical, that identity formed in trauma can become dangerously rigid. When your pain becomes your personality, anything that threatens to soothe it can feel like betrayal. And so for Malcolm, the hate wasn't simply about others, it was about survival. It protected him from ever having to be vulnerable again. He had been abandoned, lied to, broken. So instead of opening himself to healing, he embraced the kind of belief that made him untouchable. If I reject the world, it can never hurt me again. But here's the paradox of dark psychology, the very thing that empowers you in the beginning will imprison you in the end. Malcolm began to experience the limits of that hate. Not everyone who listened to him was black. Not every white person he met fit the caricature of the devil. And more than that, he started to feel something dangerous, doubt. The same powerful intellect that made him a great speaker also made him a thinker, and thinkers ask questions. What if hate isn't the answer? What if the enemy is not a skin color, but a system? What if true power lies not in division, but in elevation? But these questions couldn't be asked openly, not in the Nation of Islam. So Malcolm did what every man must do when he begins to outgrow his past. He went inward. He became silent. He started watching. And what he saw shattered his faith. His leader, Elijah Muhammad, whom he revered almost like a prophet, was exposed. Adultery, deceit, the same moral failings he condemned in the outside world were happening inside the very organization Malcolm had pledged his soul to. The disillusionment hit hard, but instead of collapsing, Malcolm did something rare, something powerful. He chose truth over loyalty. He chose growth over comfort. And in that moment, the man we thought we knew, Malcolm X, began to disappear. A new man was about to rise, not built on hate, but on clarity. Conviction is powerful. It moves crowds. It builds nations. But when conviction is based on a lie, it becomes a cage. Malcolm X had built his world on the Nation of Islam's foundation. His speeches, his purpose, his sense of self, everything was aligned with the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, but even the strongest structures collapse when the foundation starts to rot. First came the whispers stories of Elijah Muhammad's private affairs. Allegations of fathering children with teenage secretaries. Malcolm had preached moral purity. He had condemned the so-called moral failures of white America. Now his own leader was guilty of what they claimed to stand against. At first, Malcolm couldn't believe it, but the evidence was too strong, and worse, when he tried to address it, he was met with silence, then hostility. The nation wasn't a family, it was a kingdom, and Malcolm had become too powerful to be left unchecked. The betrayal hit deeper than anything he had felt since childhood. This was the man who gave him purpose, who pulled him out of prison and turned him into a legend, but now Malcolm saw it clearly. He was never more than a pawn. You see, Malcolm was dangerous because he was evolving. The Nation of Islam wanted soldiers, but Malcolm was becoming a general. He was asking better questions. What if the problem wasn't just white supremacy? What if it was power, unchecked and unaccountable in all its forms? What if moral integrity mattered more than loyalty to any man? What if the true enemy wasn't the color of someone's skin, but the system that convinces people to hate themselves and each other? These weren't just political questions. These were spiritual questions. For Malcolm, faith was never a performance. It was a pursuit. And when the Nation of Islam could no longer satisfy his spiritual hunger, he had to look elsewhere. That decision cost him everything. He was silenced by the nation, banned from speaking publicly for 90 days, but Malcolm didn't go quiet. He went inward into study, into prayer, into planning, and then he made the boldest move of his life. He left the nation. Walked away from the organization he helped build, knowing it could cost him his followers, knowing it could cost him his life. But that's the thing about growth. Once your mind is in motion, there's no going back. In April 1964, Malcolm boarded a plane bound for Cairo, destination Mecca, purpose Hajj, the sacred pilgrimage of Islam. He was no longer a minister of the Nation of Islam. He was just a man searching. But he didn't know yet that this journey would break his mind open, not gently, but violently. You see, Malcolm had spent over a decade believing race was the ultimate divide, that white skin inherently meant evil, that the world was locked in a binary struggle, black versus white, oppressed versus oppressor. But Mecca was different. There he saw something he'd never seen before: humanity, men with blue eyes and blonde hair praying beside African men, rich beside poor, powerful beside powerless, and none of them cared about the color of his skin. They called him brother, not in pity, not as a political statement, but from the soul. It shook him. In a letter from Mecca he wrote, "I have eaten from the same plate, drunk from the same glass, and slept on the same rug, while praying to the same God, not just with Muslims of different colors, but of different races. The true brotherhood I've seen here has forced me to reevaluate some of my previous conclusions." For Malcolm, this was more than a cultural shock. It was a spiritual rebirth. He realized he had been taught a corrupted version of Islam, one wrapped in racial dogma, rooted in American trauma rather than universal truth. The real Islam, pure, global, ancient, was something else entirely. It didn't erase the pain of racism, but it showed him that the enemy wasn't whiteness, it was ignorance, ego, injustice, and those enemies wore every color. Malcolm returned to America a changed man, not weak or stronger, not softer or sharper. He still believed in black empowerment, still believed in self-defense, still believed in speaking truth, no matter the consequence. But now he believed in something even more powerful, unity through clarity. He began forming new alliances, reaching out to civil rights leaders he once criticized, speaking to African heads of state. His mind had cracked open in Mecca, and what poured in was not hate. But humanity, the man who once saw the world in black and white, now saw it in a spectrum of truth, and that made him more dangerous than ever. Because Malcolm X was no longer just a symbol of black rage, he was becoming a global voice for human rights. And that kind of power doesn't just threaten racists, it threatens systems. After Mecca, Malcolm X's vision expanded far beyond the borders of the United States. He stopped seeing the struggle for black rights as an isolated battle and began to see it as part of a larger global fight against oppression. Before, Malcolm had preached separation, a world divided between us and them. But now he realized that division was a tool used by those in power to keep people weak and fighting each other. He said, "We declare our right on this earth to be a man, to be a human being, to be respected as a human being, to be given the rights of a human being." His language shifted from race war to human rights, from hate to justice. He saw allies where he had once seen enemies, white people who supported civil rights, anti-colonial movements in Africa and Asia, and the fight against poverty. These were not the devil, but partners in a shared struggle. This change wasn't about abandoning black pride. It was about embracing a powerful truth. The liberation of one group depends on the liberation of all. Malcolm began working with groups he had once denounced, including Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and others in the civil rights movement. He knew that the fight was no longer just about the color of skin, but about systemic injustice worldwide. His speeches started to call for unity across racial and national lines. "I believe in human beings and that all human beings should be respected as such, regardless of their color." This was revolutionary because it challenged the old narratives. It wasn't just about black people fighting white people anymore. It was about oppressed people everywhere standing together against exploitation. Malcolm's new world view was holistic. He understood power not as a zero, sum game, but as something that could be transformed through solidarity. This was a dangerous message to some, because it threatened the very foundation of racial division that the American system depended on to maintain control. Malcolm's journey from hate to human rights was a testament to growth, courage, and the power of questioning one's own beliefs. He showed us that even the fiercest rage can evolve into profound empathy, and that the true path to liberation is through unity, not division. This wasn't just a personal transformation. It was a blueprint for all of us to see beyond the labels, break free from the narratives we've been given, and forge a path toward true justice. Malcolm X wasn't just a firebrand speaker, he was a strategist, a man who understood that raw anger alone doesn't win battles, it only fuels the fight. True success requires discipline, education, and vision. His own life was a testament to transformation, from a troubled youth caught in cycles of crime and despair, to a scholar who devoured books in prison, from a man consumed by hatred, to a leader who inspired millions with clarity and purpose. Malcolm taught that empowerment starts within. Education is the passport to the future, he said. Without knowledge, rage turns into frustration. Without discipline, motivation becomes chaos. Without vision, success is impossible. He urged black people to build economic independence, own businesses, invest in communities, control their own resources. But beyond economics, Malcolm stressed self-respect and mental strength. He believed that success was a holistic pursuit, mind, body, and spirit aligned. One of his greatest insights was that transformation is a process, not a sudden change. It requires patience. It requires confronting uncomfortable truths. It demands resilience when the world pushes back, and Malcolm practiced what he preached. He didn't just want followers, he wanted warriors of wisdom, people who could think critically, act decisively, and grow continuously. His legacy challenges us to ask, what kind of success do we seek? Is it fleeting fame or lasting change? Do we act from reaction or from strategy? Malcolm's journey teaches that success, true success, is rooted in clarity of purpose, in the ability to move beyond pain, beyond hate, to build something greater. It's a lesson in personal growth that echoes through generations. Because the greatest battles aren't fought with guns or words alone, they are fought in the mind, and when you win that fight, you become unstoppable. Malcolm X's story didn't end with his assassination in 1965. His ideas continue to ripple through history, shaping movements, inspiring individuals, and challenging societies worldwide. Today, his journey from hatred to human rights speaks louder than ever. In an age where division still divides us, where racial injustice remains a crisis, Malcolm's transformation reminds us of something profound. Change is possible. Growth is essential. His life challenges activists, leaders, and every person seeking justice to go beyond anger, to seek clarity, to demand truth, and to build bridges, not walls. Beyond politics, Malcolm's story is a blueprint for personal transformation. It shows us that no matter how dark our past, no matter how deep our wounds, we can choose a new path. His emphasis on education, discipline, and strategic action inspires entrepreneurs, thinkers, and dreamers today. The world still needs warriors of wisdom, those who fight with knowledge and compassion, not just rage. His legacy also warns us about the dangers of rigid thinking and the psychological traps of hate. It reminds us that true power lies in understanding complexity, embracing humanity, and pursuing justice with integrity. As movements rise and fall, Malcolm's voice calls out, "Be clear, be strong, be free," and in that call there is hope, because the real Malcolm X was not a man of hate. He was a man of transformation, a man who dared to challenge himself and the world, a man who believed that the fight for justice begins with the fight within. His journey is a map, showing us how to turn pain into power, division into unity, and hate into human rights. Malcolm X's journey from hatred to human rights is a powerful testament to the transformative power of self-reflection, courage, and growth. He teaches us that anger born from pain can be a catalyst for change, but true progress comes from understanding, unity, and strategic action. His legacy challenges us to rise above division, seek truth, and fight for justice with wisdom and compassion. Malcolm's life is more than history. It's a roadmap for anyone striving to turn personal struggle into empowerment and build a world where human dignity and rights prevail for all.